Well, lovely. And Wyn, welcome. Wyn Morgan, thank you very much for joining us today. It's an absolute delight to have you here, and it's an absolute delight to have everybody else who's here on the call. And I think people will continue to join. There were quite a few people had signed up, and in fact are continuing to sign up until the last few minutes. So I've known you when kind of on and off. I don't know for more than 10 years, I think. I mean, yeah, when I think we probably first met at a Three Principles conference, and we met at another one just last week. And yeah, it was lovely to see you. And I'm very I watch your work. I love some of the things that you write on Instagram, and I love them because they're pithy, and true, and they're just always a nice reminder. And it's funny because at the same conference, or at the same weekend, I met someone who started sending me sort of motivational texts, uninvited, I may say, on a daily basis, and they are not pithy. It's just that they're sort of saccharine and not true, I think. So yeah, it's really quite it's interesting, the difference. It's interesting how we can discern truth versus that kind of tinny rattle. And to me, you are a purveyor of truth. And one thing I hoped we might have a moment to confab in advance, but one thing I learned about you this year was from your contribution to Hannah Studley's book, and and I don't know whether you want to talk about that or not, because it's entirely up to you, whatever you do want to talk about. But it was very surprising to me to learn that you had any kind of sort of issue in the past, because you you come across as so well, and you are so full of um common sense and clarity, and it's such a hopeful story. It was a story of tremendous hope for me. So if you cared to start there, it'd be lovely to hear more about that. And if you
Mhm.
care to start somewhere else and tell us about what you're doing now, um, why don't I hand it over to you? And if some questions occur to me, perhaps I can come in with those as and when.
I'm happy to start there.
Hmm.
Um, so the very short version of the short version that's in the book, because that needed to be edited down, um, is that I'd had bouts of depression since I can remember. I was a very serious kid, as a toddler, and I had very serious thoughts about life and myself and whether it meant anything at a very young age. I didn't know any different. I thought that would just be par for the course. It took a while to realize it wasn't. And then I had another bout of depression when I was 19, 20, something like that. That was the first time I think it was visible to family and friends, although I wouldn't admit it at the time. So it was kind of like I was brushing under the carpet. Then another bout at about 27, I had a kind of a crisis. Um, Dennis, yes, reading Beyond Diagnosis is on my docket. It's one of those books I think is a good thing to have on a docket, and it's a great one to dip in and out of. Um, but back to when I was about 27, my career, which was going well, had plateaued.
What was your
And I
career at
was
that
taking that
point?
very seriously.
What was
Pardon?
your career at that point, Win?
Well, I worked for the PepsiCo business in the UK, the snack foods part. And if you're in the UK, you'd know Walker's Crisps, also a load of other snack brands. And if you're not from the UK, then PepsiCo and Frito-Lay may be words that will be on brands that are familiar. So it was the Frito-Lay part of PepsiCo in the UK. And I was doing that, and then I plateaued, and then I took that very seriously. Well, because I was taking it seriously, I plateaued. I don't know the cause and effect at that point. But bumbled along still, and got through it, and was still not very happy with my lot, and not very happy being myself. Um, and then in my mid 30s, I had a proper kind of, I would call it a breakdown. I don't even know what the correct definition would be. And that's when I really needed to seek help because I was not coping with life. I was turning up for meetings late. And even though I was depressed before, I was still being quite conscientious. So my boss at the time, Chris, was brilliant. I was then working for a training consultancy company. And he was great with me. He said, look, really worried because it's not like you. So I'm either, because of your, I don't know, lack of diligence, you're either going to get fired or you're going to get help, but you need to do one or the other. So it was obvious I was going to get help. Um, and that's when I really took help, but it helped me bottom out. And that would have been back in about 2004, 2005. And I bottomed out, I think, at the beginning of 2005, where I then started getting the upswing again. But that was way before I'd heard anything about the work of Sydney Banks and the three principles, way before any of that. Because I was bouncing back a little bit every time, but I'd also be dipping back in. But now what I realize, even though I went to Michael Neal in late 2010 to be fixed, to be NLP'd fixed, and he was telling me, you don't need fixing because you're not broken, and I just wouldn't hear it.
Mhm.
But over the next few years, I stuck in there because people I got to know were being impacted in an amazing way right in front of my eyes. And I stayed with it and learned a bucket load to help me realize that I had the only thing going on in me was a subjective reality, nothing objective going on whatsoever. So another way of saying it, I was making everything up, including my serious thinking about me, self-esteem was made up or lack thereof, needing confidence was made up. Everything about me was made up. And the more and more I see about that, which I continue to do, the more free I feel in myself, the more peace I have in being me, and the more I am very grateful to have been born and incarnated. Because that really wasn't the case for a huge part of my first number of decades. I mean, I was not happy being me. Now I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled. And I haven't changed, I haven't grown another 4 legs, haven't grown another 4 inches. I'm still the same guy, you know. But here's the other thing that was interesting. People would always ask me, therapists would ask me, so what was the cause? Well, anything in your childhood? No. Parents, brilliant, great family life, cool brother, got on with him, well, as best as two brothers could, I guess. We'd fight a bit, but any two boys would growing up. Amazing grandparents. Everything was great. I just wouldn't take it well. I wouldn't take life well. I had it all out of sync.
Mhm.
Um, so it's interesting to me to see how there is no rhyme nor reason to me having what was then diagnosed as bipolar 2, which used to be called cyclothymia. But the reason they changed the name is because it's a very difficult one to say and spell, I think. So it's like what was called manic depressive, like what's now called bipolar. But the difference with bipolar 2 is you get some of the highs, but not the extreme, but you do get the lows.
Mm.
But it's funny now, even explaining that as a diagnosis, I can't even relate to it anymore, which I think is a really good thing.
Mm.
Because all that was happening was when I was in a low mood, I was taking my thinking more seriously. Now it's duh, yeah, you would. That's how moods work. But I didn't know, duh, that's how moods work, and nothing else was going on. There was nothing intrinsically wrong with me. I just didn't understand how thought and consciousness work inside a human mind. That's all.
Mm.
So the hope, Christian, that you just mentioned, and in the other 59, 60 stories in the book point to the exact same thing, back to the source of just a very simple misunderstanding of how well we work when we understand ourselves. There's nothing else going on other than thought appearing real sometimes.
Yeah, yeah, lovely, lovely. So in terms of your career, you said at this point you were working for an international training company. I know you're now you now run your own coaching consultancy, your own coaching business. Tell us a little bit about that transition.
Well, the transition was pretty much necessary. I'd been with that company, the management training company, for 5 years. And for the first 2 years, again, I was doing really well. And in that time, I was promoted to then be the manager of all the other course facilitators, all the other trainers. Um, but it was at that point I was also getting a little bit of a crisis in confidence, and my then relationship with my girlfriend broke down. So everything kind of like fell apart. But also at the same time, classically, you'd get 5 weeks of holiday, 5 weeks of vacation in a year. And I know for some parts of the world, 5 weeks feels like, what? We only get two. You complaining about five? Yeah, but I was spending the entire 5 weeks on my own personal development. So it was just something needed to change. And of course, I was, having some issues of my own. So me and my boss, who was the managing partner and the owner of that company, we kind of like got together and worked out a future that would work for me, where I'd be a freelance associate and set up on my own. And that was in 2006. So what's that, 18 years ago now? And I went on my own, and it's the same. It started off with the same work anyway, because I still run a lot of corporate training programs. It's now the content is very different, as you can imagine. What's changed in what I understand to be most impactful to people is very different than it was 18 years ago. And there's an awful lot more one-to-one. I was probably doing 10% one-to-one coaching
Hmm.
back in 2005, 6. Now it's 50% of my time at least is in the one-to-one. Yeah.
Right.
The transition was actually quite easy. Um, I didn't find that hard. I you know, just talk to people and then I'd get work because I knew what would be helpful. Even then, what I thought was helpful, and that hasn't really changed. Now, there are some ups and downs in that, as there would be at any point.
Yeah.
A blip that happened in 2008 with the global financial crisis. 2020, everything changed because in 2019, I probably spent 60% of my time away from the UK,
Hmm.
physically away from the UK with work all over the world. Well, of course, in 2020, that stopped. So all my in-person work got cancelled within a week in mid-late March of 2020. And what companies and individuals are looking for really changed. But what was interesting to me, even though I did have a bit of worry and a little bit of what am I now going to do about this? Um, I think it was within about 3 weeks, all of that came back. All of the stuff that was cancelled came back in different ways, but the actual revenue number came back. But people were looking for things such as um, dealing with overwhelm, dealing with uncertainty, as opposed to um, strategic account development. Deeper business relationships. All of a sudden, the priorities would change for very good reasons. It was more about engaging employees as opposed to the outreach to um, business partners, customers, and suppliers.
Mm. Cool. Yes, it's interesting, isn't it? How I was just having a kind of walk and talk earlier this afternoon, and with someone who was, trying to work out where to go with her career, and we were just, I mean, what came up, and what I think what she was comfortable with is that um she knows that the trajectory she's on isn't right for her, or isn't where what she wants to continue with. She doesn't know where she wants to go next, but it will become clear. And it strikes me that listening to you talk about that period of change that happened for everybody in 2020, that there is, it appears to me that once one is in this field, in this work, that we are guided and the opportunities arise, and it's quite astonishing, and that, one can kind of relax into that a bit. It's not on my shoulders to the extent that I once thought everything was, and ironically, it works out a lot better when I'm not trying to,
Amazing, isn't it?
you know, it- to pivot slightly from that. I'm curious
Yeah.
about So you've described it now, you've got kind of 50% one-to-one, and I imagine, I know that most of the people in the call have, at least, if not all, have some um, mm, some awareness of the three principles paradigm and have some sense of what one-to-one coaching might be like. But I'm curious how today, or these days, you approach a corporate training that's not one to one. If you're working with a new client, I'm just curious how you approach and how that goes down. And that I think that meeting. How do you introduce this work cold, or weave it into a subject, or a goal that has been set for you?
I listen at the very start. So let's say they come to me and what did I say earlier on? Strategic account planning, I think was the three words I used earlier on, which is
Yep.
something I used to do a lot of, say back in 2002 to 2010.
I don't even exactly know
Um,
what that is, to be honest.
yeah, you're not missing much. So what that is let's say in the September of this year in 2024, a bunch of people who are in the sales department or in what's now called sometimes customer success or client success or account management would figure out what they need to do with their book of business or their client portfolio or their customers during 2025. So it's kicking that all off with some. I guess the best part of that is it gives quality time for thinking. But what they'd want as a result of that would be a plan that they would then take to their customers, that the customers would sign on to and get a bunch of agreements that would hold right the way through to the end of 2025. Now, funnily enough, that hardly came to fruition, not because the customers went up to it too, their business partners went up for it too, but well, by the time they've actually, presented it, something will have changed. By the time December comes, even before it starts, something else will have changed. There could be huge changes going on by the time January comes of 2025, yet alone December of 2025. So it kind of stopped making sense. But let's just say they come to me wanting that kind of thing now. Well, I would just be curious as to what they really want, because that to me is a symptom of something that they really want. So, as an example, when this happened, I don't know, when was it? 6 months ago? No, it must have been longer than that because it was late last year. Um, 9 months ago, when I asked them the questions, what do you really want from this? What they really wanted was better, deeper relationships between their people and their client base, their customers. So we built a program to do that. And if you think of what it takes to get a deeper, better relationship, well, it start, such things as listening really well, suspending your agenda, creative problem solving, collaborating, working well together. And that comes down to me anyway, state of mind and the degree to which I'm distracted by my own thinking will determine how well I'm listening. How much of me and my business and my targets I've got on my mind will determine how much I listen and how willing I am to collaborate and come up with creative solutions that's great for both parties. So to me, any human being's ability to do that brilliantly is really answered by the state of mind question and the presence question and to what gets in our way when we get in our head question. So that's where I go.
Mm.
I listen and I get curious and curious and curious to the real thing that they really want and need. Because sometimes they don't really know what they need. They just know the superficial thing they're looking for. So I can help with that. And then in the group training, the one thing I would always want to do once I've had intake, once I've met with a good selection of the individuals who are being trained, I will make it really clear early on why it's in their best interests to be there.
So say
So
more
let's
about
say
that. Say more about that.
yeah. So let's say I've got a group of 40 people, for 3 days. And the company have signed off for doing something on state of mind. Then I'd want in the first section for them to understand why them understanding state of mind is a good idea for them. So I might say something like, who here's noticed that some days work is easy, enjoyable, and you get loads of things done, and some days it's the opposite. Yeah, okay. Who in here sometimes struggles with overthinking? Yeah, yeah, right. Everyone's hands go up, right? Who here would like to be able to have more enjoyment and more ease in their work and better relationships with their customers without that taking a toll? Yeah, I would. Okay, that's what we're here for. Well, I don't know if I'd use those words. I don't know if it would only be hands up, but it would be in that direction that I'd want all of us to have a meeting of the minds together that this is going to be for their benefit, not because the big boss has told them to turn up to spend 3 days with this guy, because that's not going to be a good a good place for them to be. If they're mandated and they have half of their mind elsewhere, that's not going to be particularly helpful or impactful for them.
Yeah. Do you, from time to time, meet people who are resistant? I mean, I've always loved going on training, even in my last job. But I remember some of my colleagues just hated it and were so scathing and skeptical. And I'm just wondering if you if you ever meet resistance, and I know many of many of us do from time to time. And if you do, how you have handled that.
Well, it depends. If the resistance is quiet resistance, then I don't want to give it too much attention because they
Mm,
might just catch something and I might misinterpret it anyway. So what could be quiet resistance could be quiet listening.
mhm.
I don't want to get that wrong. So I might be asking them something during a break or, bring them into a conversation. Um, if they're more vocally disruptive, I might, just ask them a question, but it matters that I know that their resistance, they're resisting what they think, they're not resisting me. That's happening inside of them. Because if I have an ounce of thinking that that's about me, then I will have resistance to their resistance, and then we'll be having an intellectual conversation, or I'll be defensive, neither of which are going to be that fruitful. So I might say something like, "Look, I know that this might be a difficult thing to grasp. Believe me, it took me years. So if anyone sees a little bit about what I'm pointing at over the next 3 days, I'll be thrilled because he'd be still a lot faster than I was. But be open to the idea that maybe there's something here that's been obvious to us, but we've never seen it for what it is. It could be really helpful."
Nice, nice.
Or another way of saying it, I want them to settle down. And if I'm buying into anyone's resistance, I'm going to make it worse or think that it's about me, then yeah, it's not going to help them settle down. So I don't know if that helps with your question, Christian.
Yeah. Oh no, it's lovely. That is, yeah, I'm curious. I was somehow when you were speaking, a presentation I was doing to a bunch of doctors came to mind, which actually went on the whole very well. But there was one guy who was practically turned in his chair with his back to me by the end of it, and yeah, I just remember it being that, almost funny. It was so determined to show his disapproval physically. But
Yeah,
we had a chat, and I think the fact that I wasn't taking it personally sort of helped him move back 45 degrees.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that's better than 90 degrees, right? 45 degrees. There's something in here as well. There's two things I want to say about this, if that's all right.
Of course. Yes.
First of all, I don't want to be afraid of detractors.
Mhm.
Because if someone is being like a detractor, they're probably acting out on thoughts that 50 to anywhere between 25 and 50% of the group are going to be having anyway,
Yeah.
but they're just a little bit too shy or too scared to say it out loud. And it can be really helpful then in the conversation later on. And one thing that helped me see this, and this was in, I think it was in Chicago quite a while ago, and I was doing a North America trip. So I was doing, I think, twice in Chicago, Toronto, Vancouver, LA, something like that, right, with the same company over about 4 weeks. And when I had the leaders together in that first thing in Chicago, there was one vocal kind of like, there, this inside out nonsense. No, 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 right? Um, but respectful in the way that they were saying it. And, I said, just be open to it. And it kind of, they calmed down a bit, but I wanted to talk to them during a break. And during the break, we had well, it's actually lunch. It was quite a bit later on day one that we had a quick chat. And we were talking about what it was that was troubling her in her job, and it was two team members. She goes, "Yeah," and I said, "And is it troubling you now?" "Yeah, I'm really worried. I'm finding it difficult to listen because I've got these two people on my mind, and because I'm not with them and I'm not contactable today, tomorrow, and the next day, I'm finding this a challenge." Because that's what I mean. What do you mean? Well, they're not here, and they're causing your mind to be all over the place. And it can't be them if they're not here. And she looked at me as if I was, talking through a different orifice, through a different hole. Um, and then she went, "You're right. You're right. I could be listening to anything right here. I could think anything." And she went further than anyone else in the group that day
Wow.
in her understanding. She was also the first person in that company who hired me privately. Well, so to me, that was proof of the pudding that detractors are not bad news.
Mm.
Really not bad news. The other thing to say is that the second point I wanted to make was in real time, I know I get ideas about what to say in real time. When I'm not, in my own head, defensive, trying to prove a point, all that kind of, when I'm not distracted by my own thinking about what I'm making of anything, all of a sudden, I can have a deeper access to fresh ideas from out of the blue,
Yeah.
also known as universal mind, right?
Yeah.
It's almost like a download. I mean, I'll think of questions that I never asked before, make metaphors up on the spot. I cannot plan those. Goes back to something that you said about the conversation that you had earlier on, is in the real time, in the moment. It just takes care of itself in beautiful ways.
Yeah. One of the things I've come to see, and I'm sure that you have something similar, that is, I have an absolute confidence that everything that is needed will be in the room. So it's not so not just through me, but also through the client or group, and that's there's just absolutely no doubt about that in my mind.
Yeah. And to me, when I see that and keep seeing it, that's what I know takes care of it.
Mm,
Because it's blatantly obvious to me now that that's just fact. It's just
yeah,
true. Seen it too many times for me to, even my own intellect, to doubt that's absolutely true.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. Uh, would you be open to some questions when quite a few
Absolutely.
people here?
Yeah.
But before we go there, and please do, it would be lovely to hear from as many of you as possible and to know why you joined us today and what you'd like to learn from Wyn. But before we just do that, I wondered if there's anything that we haven't touched on yet. I've been sort of firing questions at you, but anything that you wanted to share with the group that was maybe in your mind.
The only thing that popped into my mind that just then was I never want me to come across as if I know more, or I've got it together, or I never get tricked by anything like thought appearing real. Because I do get caught up, no different from anyone else. And what I'd say is, while the little, and it is a little, the little that I know has probably saved my life, not just changed it.
Mm.
I know how helpful that is, but it doesn't mean I'm right. It just feels towards truth. I don't know, it's empirical. I wouldn't want to get so, I don't know what the word would be, righteous
Mm.
or preachy, because I know what that does. So here's an example, Christian, right? You'll notice in the statements that go on to LinkedIn, they're all from blogs and articles I've written over the years. And none of them, with the exception of one that I thought I want to get that one taken out. It's never do this, you do that. It's never telling anyone what to do. It's self-reflection about how I, as an example of a human being, works. And what people take from that is what people take from it. Because I know I do not respond well to being told what to do for two real good reasons. They ain't the expert on me. And second, it builds up resistance in me. And well, and if there's a third, if we want a third one, it's well, what to do is responsive to the moment. There isn't a one time, one piece of advice that fits all. I mean, I saw it today about someone saying, hey, consistency is key. What? I don't know what that means. Consistency in what?
That's
Consistently
good.
inconsistent? Consistently? I don't know. I mean, it's just, you know, it was just like, I don't get it. So I like to be a, I like to have my knowing that I don't know and do not have it all together on show, because that is making me totally the same as everyone else without me thinking I'm different or better or know more. Because I know that that isn't helpful. Because when I fall into that, which I do, it just doesn't tend to go well.
Mm.
So that's all also the only other thing that popped into my head.
Yeah, I love that. And it was an early insight for me. I stumbled across the principles after many years on a kind of spiritual recovery journey. And one of the things in the first weekend that somebody said, and it's not a principle, it was an observation, but it was but somebody said everybody goes up and down and up and down and up and down. And I thought, oh my God, yes. I've been doing that forever, and there's now no expectation. I had been trying to get on a straight up trajectory and brackets failed consistently. And this sense of this is completely normal, natural, and inevitable was the most wonderful disburdening for me. And I echo everything else you said about how we're all the same, when we're never getting out of that. Now you see it
Yeah,
now.
yeah. Cool.
Lovely. Thank you.
Lovely.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. All right, questions.
Yeah, please do come in. If you're even thinking about it, come in because it just adds so much to the call if we hear from the people on it. Annie.
Thank you both so much. I was really delighted to hear Universal Mind in the last 5 minutes. How much of Universal Mind do you share? You talked to us about the impact of that on insight and being in the moment. How much of that true nature of who we are do you share with, a wider audience?
It varies. And it varies on if I was to give the real smart answer, okay, but this is more of intellect than mind. It would vary depending upon what mind wants me to share. So sometimes it would be not much. Might just talk about ideas out of the blue, which is pointing to mind. To the fact that we fall asleep and the fact that we wake up. That's mind in action. That's our human nature and part of that. So I will point to it to the extent that I think they'll follow me. I don't really know. So I guess I'll be responsive in the moment. But here's what made it, and he made me a little bit less shy to go there. And this was, I think it was the last time I worked in India in a company. And this company, they'd send me around the world for, I don't know, well over 20 years I've worked with this company. And I think this is my third time in India with them. And the head of HR is someone I'd got to know a little bit over the previous few years. So I invited him to come to the end of the 4th day with this group. And they are business to business client managers, right? How do we get more business from our clients? And, and the clients were anywhere in the region of $500,000 to, I don't know, 30 million a year in US dollars. So quite a big organization and especially big in India. So I had a really great 3.5 days with, I don't know, 18 people in the room. And then the HR guy was coming for the end. And what we decided was, say 6 people would present back their key insights of what they're taken and the impact it will have when they're back in work on Monday. So they shared with the head of HR in that last kind of hour and a half or so. And I was really loving what they were saying and loving the look on, my friend's face, the HR guy. And then the HR guy stood up after everyone had said, and he said, "It's strange. If I didn't know better, I'd thought you'd all been on a spiritual awareness course." And look, I'll completely confess, right? My heart sank. I went, "Oh no, blown it. What's..." But he said, before I really, bought into my bad feeling, he said, "And I couldn't be happier." And I went, "What?" Right? I was a little bit curious about that. Anyway, workshop closes. HR guy and me, we went for a cup of tea. And I asked him about it. And I said, "Well, what did you mean that you couldn't have been happy?" He said, "Well, they've all got spiritual practices. There were 4 different religions in the room, and they will all have a spiritual practice that they have. So the fact that you've pointed to something like that in their relationships with their customers, their relationships with their own minds, they would have been really open to it." And I went, "I wish I would have had this conversation on Monday." He said, "Well, I didn't know exactly what you'd cover, but I didn't worry. Look, it went brilliantly." And that alone just helps me remember that I don't have to be so bashful, so shy about saying things.
I think the more we can talk about it, then we'll reach that tipping point in the human race, because we've all fallen in love, haven't we? We all know what it's like to look in the eyes of, a pet that we love, or a child that we love, or another something. And the more we point in that direction, the more we'll understand state of mind and the illusion of it.
Yeah. And we fall into it.
Yeah.
Fall in love. Fall into that feeling and look into the eyes of a dog.
Do we fall into it, or are we already it and we just happen to see it in that moment?
Just words, aren't they?
Yeah, they are words.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think you're right. I think it's more of the absence of the blockage as opposed to the doing. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you. Lovely to speak with you.
Thanks, Annie. Who else? Dennis.
You must have been reading my mind. I've been holding off. I actually was holding off to hear everybody else because I wanted to know if I was the only one with an accent in the room.
You're not. You're not.
Yeah. Well, so much is running around through my mind. So let's see. Picking one, Annie, what you were saying about love, and it was reminding me of a conversation I was having with others, and I want to focus towards Christian and Wyn, but it just kind of made me think about I constantly talk about what is love, where does it come from, and it occurs to me that we have love, which is just something you don't have to really practice. It's there, and it's shared. We can share it amongst everyone else. But I think for most of us, the most noticeable love, and I don't have a better way of expressing it, so bear with me. They're just words, but please, it's we put rules around love. And that's the love we notice most. Like, I can only love this kind of car and not this kind of car. I can only love this type of person, but not this type of person. And I think that's the love we recognize. It's when we stop putting the rules around it. That will be the kind of the greater love that we start to connect with. And the difficulty is when so if I speak to my wife about it, something like that, she'll go, well, I, I don't know if I want you to be open to having the same kind of love that you have with me, that you have with other people. And it's like, because I'm happy to have the rule that I will only be true to my wife. I'm happy to have that rule, but I know if I didn't have the rule, there'd be other things. Does that make sense, or did I go like way off the rails?
Awesome. Love it. No pun
It-
intended. Love it.
Let's go with puns. I love them. And when I was listening with what you were saying before, and just about the communication with people, and I think I was one of those people that when I would listen to people, I would try to connect with my experiences. And rather than talking to what I had heard them say, I was maybe relating an experience from my past into them. And when what they really wanted me to do is say, I heard them and heard what they were saying. So the two greatest rules, real small rules I learned, was to say, I don't know if I don't know, and open it back up to them. Or there's a book called Neither Wolf Nor Dog, which I had first time I experienced this rule was it's about Native American culture, and one of the characters in the book says that one of the fun things about the white man is that they don't know how to be in silence. So you just wait 5 seconds and they'll start talking again. And so learning the 5-second rule has been very beneficial for me as well.
Yeah. And they're good pointers, aren't they? Both of those things too. They're helpful pointers in my mind. Because whether it's a 5-second rule or just, hey, that's a good idea now and again. I mean, that would help me remember to not pay attention to every single thought I ever have. And that's smart. Because, I mean, look, recently, even this past weekend, I've seen again that when I'm working with people, I know not to take my insecure thinking seriously. I've known that for a while, and I've got better at it. Not perfect, nowhere near it. What I've yet to become that aware of until I saw it again I think on Sunday, in another program with Dr. Aaron Turner, was I still take my compelling, oh, they need to know this thought seriously. I take that thought seriously. And I hadn't seen it's the same thing. It's just thought. And the feeling, whether it's excitement, compulsion, insecurity, fear, that feeling tells me it's personal mind thinking. It's coming from my intellect as opposed to a deeper place, which is what's available beyond me listening to those, first 5 seconds or first 2 seconds or first 3.8 seconds or first 55 seconds. I don't know the number of seconds, but it does point to that, a deeper listening to mind as opposed to intellect. That is the smartest of me, is the deeper mind. And I think it's, great about, all these things that you're picking up. The other thing that came to mind, if you're okay in me saying something else about the first share that you had about love, I kind of think there's probably 3 things there. So again, love looks like it's conditional, and it looks like the conditions are coming from the outside. So I will love this person, not this person. I will love this car, not this car. I will love this topping on my pizza, not this topping on my pizza. And it looks like the pizza, the car, the person are the cause. No. 100% coming from thought. It's what I'm making of. All the time. It's coming this way. Nothing to do with them. Equally lovable. And to me, knowing that means that I am absolutely, it's possible for me to love everything and love everyone. And the degree to which I do that is about where my head's at, not what's out in the world that I'm looking at. It's here, not there. Which then could easily become, well, wait a minute, does that mean if I was in a relationship right now that my girlfriend would say, does that mean you're going to sleep with everyone? So, well, no, I don't have to act on every thought and feeling I have. That's again different. And it's good to know because, look, I love pizza. In my mind, I could eat 20 a day. I don't want to, so I won't. In fact, I haven't had a pizza in a few months because I noticed that my clothes got smaller. And the amount of pizza I have causes my clothes to get smaller. So I figure I don't want my clothes to get so tight. So I've chosen to not eat so much pizza. I still love it. But that would, save me from, well, from not being true to someone if I've made a commitment to them. Then that's my choice. There's so much there that's just a really great thing, to be free to love everyone and not have to sleep with everyone. Thank heavens. Yeah.
That's too much. That's too much energy at this stage.
I think me, even at 20, that would have been a bit too much energy for me. Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you both. Wendy, I noticed your camera was off and now it's on. Were you going to come in?
No. Hi, Wyn, and hi,
Hey, Wendy.
Christian. I saw Wyn at the Aaron Turner, lovely thing. No, I'm just sitting here really enjoying this. For a short session, I have heard so much, so clearly, so simply. You make it. You don't make it. You just share it simply, Wyn, and it's been beautiful. I don't often listen back on things, but I'm going to listen on this. I think in a space of 20 minutes, you shared so much that, I did the naughty thing. I picked up my pen and I was going to write and I put it down, that thing. And then I thought, well, this isn't going to work because he just keeps, there's sparks there. It's great. So yeah, thank you. It's been beautiful. Yeah, nice. Yeah, excellent.
Thank you, Wendy. Good to see you again, and lovely to meet you at the weekend.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Wendy. Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to? Sally, I'm just going to ask you to unmute yourself. You need to unmute yourself.
All right. Can't tell you how I am loving the conversation and the things that have been said. I really don't have a question, just to comment on the kinds of things that are being talked about here. I've really never been in conversations like these with people who I don't know. Yes, with people that I know, but with people that I've never even, well, I've seen you, Christian, and I've seen Wendy. So yeah, I feel like I know you to some degree. But anyway, I'm thrilled to pieces to hear these things. And I'm feeling there's a lot that holds me down. I know it. I'm reading your book right now, Christian. And so just I'm a beginner with the inside out. But at times when things are happening to me and I am aware that I can be inside out right here, I don't have to be oppressed by what's coming in. That is so liberating and so changing. And I can tell you that I've already changed. Who would think? I mean, I am 78. I'm almost 79. So to have these things come to me before I leave this planet, I'm thrilled. I'm just thrilled to do the rest of my life in a different way. So thank you so very much to all of you who share. And I do want to share and contribute something that's worthwhile for everybody else. So anyway, I hope to see everybody again and often. I know we're having something happen in September, so that will be good. And this was such a wonderful gift. Thank you for just giving this to us. What an amazing thing to do. What a gracious and generous thing to do with your time and your knowledge. And so I guess that would be it. But thank you so much.
Wow. Thank you, Sally. I can see
Sure.
a change in you, and I am so touched by what you've shared. And it just struck me when that this here is an example of that feeling love for everybody. Most of the people in the call I've met before, but not everybody. And it's not that love isn't like a big it's just that I feel so touched by what people have shared. You've all that that is a demonstration, and particularly you, when you've come along, you've given your time freely, and you've shared such wisdom, and everybody who's contributed has done the same thing. Thank you.
Yeah,
Women.
you're
Thank you,
welcome.
Sally. I really felt that.
Mm.
I really
Really
meant it.
felt that. I know.
Yeah.
You can tell, how heartfelt that was. What was it that you said? No longer be oppressed by what's coming at me. I mean, what? What a beautiful, powerful statement of what you're seeing is now different than before.
Yeah, it's a wonderful feeling, like going through a door, a big door. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Well, thank you very much. We're in our we just have a few minutes left. I don't know if there's anyone who hasn't had a chance to come in, speak now, as the saying goes. And since nobody seems to be taking us up on that, when would perhaps I could hand it back to you just to close us out for today?
At some point, whether it's during a day or during a week, I'll remember the big picture about what's going on for me, what I've seen. Because I would fight with the fact I was having a human experience. I'd really fight. I'd resist it. I didn't think it was a good idea at all. And even when I'm caught up, even when I'm in one of those low moods, even when it looks like I'm oppressed by what's coming at me from the world, I am still experiencing life. I'm still experiencing the touch of my hand on my desk here. I'm still looking out. I'm still experiencing light and color and hearing things and smelling things and tasting things and having emotions. And while not all of those emotions are ones I would necessarily choose, or going back to a previous conversation, not all of those emotions I would sleep with or want to sleep with, the fact is that this really small selection of atoms into molecules, into complex molecules, into cells, into a multicellular organism, into a human form that then is conscious and is sentient and is aware of their own experience. Most of matter in this universe isn't, as far as we're aware, conscious. So at some point, I'm reminded of the truth that here I am, a part of the universe, aware of its own existence and aware of the rest of the universe, not separate, made of the same, looking back at everything that's me. I remember I was always in awe of the planet Saturn and how beautiful it is and its rings. And a few years ago, running a retreat in the USA, my co-host and friend and her partner, who's also a friend, has a really powerful telescope. And because there's no light pollution, telescope at planet Saturn. So I saw planet Saturn a few years ago with my own eyes, not from a book or a screen, through my own eyes through a telescope. And it just reminded me in that instant of blissing out at how beautiful it is, that what created that created me. That this life is universe experiencing itself. Impersonally, but just looks personal. And every time I boil it back down to that, and then I'm reminded of that, comes out of the blue again at some point, I am just so thrilled to have been born. And that refuels me again. And again, and again.
Oh, wow. What a note to end it on, Wyn. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Wyn, that was
Thank you.
wonderful. I will put your details underneath the recording. Yeah, bravo. And I have already put it on the event, so you can find Wyn on all social media. And thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Christian. Thanks for doing this, for inviting me, and for everyone who came. Thank you so much. Lovely to spend some time with you today.